And we're going to be looking at the reality that the Joburg Ballet has completed their run of Giselle at the Johannesburg, or rather Joburg Theatre. And this happened last week. And they're currently performing the same production at the State Theatre in Pretoria. Tonight is a twofold conversation. We get to learn more about Dane Hurst and unpack his career and life. But we're also going to be looking at the story behind one of the most visually exquisite, romantic and tragic ballet of all time. Romance, tragedy. If you're thinking Romeo and Juliet, apparently this one tops it. Okay. Mr. Dane, thank you so much for joining us. Am I telling the truth there?
Thank you so much for having me on your show. Yes, with regards to Giselle, it is one of the most famous ballets around the world, and it's actually the most performed ballet of all time. And there's reason for that, because it's a story that everyone can connect, and it's something that we can all understand. So yeah, it's really great for us to be performing this as our first production of our 25th anniversary season.
Dane, tell me why this is the most performed ballet. What is it about the storyline that sees it repeatedly featured on stages?
Well, at the heart of the character, we have this young girl, Giselle. She falls in love with this young man, and her heart is broken because he doesn't reveal to her that he's actually engaged to be married to someone else, and she later finds out. And in the story, we know that she has a weak heart, and because of the anguish of the despair of being betrayed by someone that actually promised eternal love to her, in the character of Albrecht, she dies of a broken heart, and I think this is something that men and women can associate with. They can associate with true love, can associate with having a broken heart, dealing with anguish and despair and betrayal. And this story, it's told in two acts. The first act, we understand who Giselle is. We understand who Albrecht is. He comes to the village where Giselle, we find Giselle, and in terms of her background, she comes from a peasant village, so not a wealthy background, and he disguises himself to be one of the villagers, one of her own. But in actual fact, he's a nobleman. He comes from royalty, so on the other end of the wealth spectrum. And he promises her love, and she doesn't know. She's innocent. Her innocence, she falls in love with him. However, there's a villager, another character, Hilarion, from the village, who actually truly loves Giselle, and he tries to convince her that Albrecht is an imposter, and that she should be careful. But in the end, in the village, there's the grapes harvest, and there's a celebration, and we find the Duke and his daughter Bathilde coming to the village, to the surprise of Albrecht, and it's revealed to everyone that he's actually engaged to be married to Bathilde, and this is where Giselle loses her mind, and there's this incredible mad scene that happens where we see her falling apart, where we see her anguish at the fact that she was lied to, she was betrayed, and she was made a fool of in front of her people where she comes from, and she jumps into his arms, and she collapses and dies in his arms and falls down to the floor. So the first act is such an intense story. It's a roller coaster of emotions, and you just feel for this young woman. She's a true portrayal of youthful innocence and possibility and the future, and this guy comes along and breaks her heart, and the second act is completely different, where we find this spirit of Giselle, We are in this enchanted forest, and we find Hilarion, who was the guy that was trying to tell Giselle about this imposter. He's mourning her death at the grave, and we then see the Queen of the Willies and appearing in this forest. And basically, the Willies, their characters represent the souls of the women who have been betrayed by their loves before their wedding, and they die. They die before they are married, and it's their vengeful spirits who roam around this enchanted forest, and any man that comes across their path, they force them to dance to their death. So they take out their vengeance against the men who betrayed them, and it's an empowering act for women who have been betrayed. And here we see Giselle returning in spirit form, dancing with Albrecht for the last time, and the spirits of the Willies try to get him to dance to his death, but Giselle's true love for him saves him, and the day arrives, the spirit disappear, and we find Albrecht by himself, alone, with his heartbreak. After having broken her heart in Act 1, we see him alone and mourning her death. So it's a story that we can all understand, and because this is a ballet, it's a story told without words. It's quite clear and evident in how it's being choreographed, the gestures, the nuances, the music, the atmosphere, the physicality. It's all quite easy to understand and get involved in. So for any audience, young or old, it really is a beautiful story, and I guess that's why it survived the test over the years.
Mr. Dane, I promise you, I have been reacting to every single descriptor of the play. Act 1, Act 2. I'm like, first of all, Engelbrecht should be taken out by the Woolies, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. Secondly, why didn't Hilarion get, Giselle's ear? These, of course, are questions that the audience might have after watching the play. Now, as the artistic director behind, in actual fact, not the play, but the ballet production, as the artistic director behind the ballet, what are some of the nuances that you believe escape through the dance form into the audience? And do you find people asking these questions, like, why did this happen? Why did that happen?
Yeah, so being the artistic director of a big ballet company, it's important that I understand the context of where the company exists. Joburg Ballet exists in South Africa, and the story, we performed the story that's been created, in 18, I think the first ballet production of Giselle was created in 1841. So it's in Europe. So it's something that was created in another part of the world that we are now performing here in South Africa. And I have to understand who the audiences are in South Africa in 2026 who are coming to approach the ballet for the first time. And I also have to be cognizant of the fact that we've got a long tradition of ballet in this country. Joburg Ballet this year is 25 years old. We celebrate an anniversary now in February. The company was founded in February 2001 when it first performed at the State Theatre as the South African Ballet Theatre with the very production Giselle. But also on the other side of the country, we have another company, Cape Town City Ballet. It's been going for 91 years, and we've got audiences who have seen this production over the decades. And what makes it special is that every version of the production, whether it's done every year or whether it's done every decade, it's only as good as the artists who are on stage, because the dancers who make up the company, currently we have a cross-section of dancers from all around the country. We've got dancers from the UK, we've got dancers from Italy, from Japan, from Brazil. who make up the company. We also have guests from Spain and France. So these dancers, generally, to be a ballet dancer, you have a very short career, and it's generally between the age of 18 to 40, 44, thereabouts. So it's definitely for the youthful in spirit, the youthful in physicality. So the company that we have at the moment, it's really important to understand who they are, what they can offer to the audience, and what they bring. Because, for example, dancers from South Africa give a very different physicality, a very different emotional resonance, a very different physicality, a very different attack, and also different musicality. So some people might come to the Giselle production, they might know the story through and through. They might have seen it for the past decades, but what makes it special is the artists who are on the stage. So my job as the artistic director of Joburg Ballet is to celebrate the unique individuality and the artistry of the dancers that make up this generation of Joburg Ballet. And naturally, we have to hold on to the traditions of ballet, the traditions of the classical productions. We don't stray too far away from what these classics represented way back and what they represent now. And what brings a freshness to it is the artistic portrayal. Now, how do you keep something fresh that's been performed for over 100 years? It comes down to the details. It comes down to the musicality. It comes down to the technical proficiency, because ballet is incredibly difficult. Dancers train every single day. We at Joburg Ballet, we've got a dance class between 10 to 11:15, 11:30, and that's just physical training every day. Dancers honing their body, shaping their muscles, working on the physicality, working on timing, working on line, working on aesthetic, working on stamina, shape, etc. So that happens on a daily basis, and the rehearsals are grueling. A typical day is between 10 to 6, Monday to Friday, and then Saturday, half day. And it's important to find the best coaches to fine-tune the instrument that is the body within which this art form communicates, because it's an art form that is communicated purely through physicality and body language. No text is spoken. So it's very difficult to communicate a complex story such as Giselle without actually physically speaking. So in this production, we've got an outstanding creative team. We've got two original founding members of the company, Angela Malan and Corin Bucas McDonald. They were the young dancers alongside four other founding members in Ian McDonald, Dirk Budenhorst, Kimbrian Berg, Fiona Budd, who started the company as young dancers. And that was their first production 25 years ago. And Angela and Corin have performed and have produced the Ballet of Giselle over the decades. So them coming back to the company now, 25 years later, they are the best people to communicate the essence of this ballet, because they've lived it, they've performed it, they've rehearsed it, they've worked in it, they've seen it, they've staged it, they've been ballet mistresses, they've been principal artists, they've been artistic directors. So them working alongside our artistic team right now in Kim Vieira and Nicole Ferreira-Dill, who also performed in the ballet as performing artists. They are the conduits of the legacy, of the lineage, and our young dancers today rely on them as superior coaches to be able to help them bring this ballet to life. So my job is to make sure that the right people are in the studio, that the conditions for rehearsals, for creating this ballet are fit to offer the audiences an outstanding work of art. Because when you come to the theater, you're witnessing a live work of art. You've got scenography, you've got lighting, you've got costumes, you've got music, you've got dance, and it's the entire experience that creates this moving picture. And there's so many different moving parts that if one thing is out of place, it can ruin the experience. So my job is to make sure that the right people are in place, that the traditions are, that the technical execution is at the highest level. And even though in this production I might not be on the floor doing any of the rehearsals or doing any of the staging, it's my job to make sure that everything is in place, to make sure that the artists who are the experts are able to live their art form in the studio and then on stage.
The voice there of Dane Hurst, a multi-award-winning dancer, choreographer, as well as artistic director. The focal ballet production that we are talking about is Giselle. But also we're looking at the nuances that tie this beautiful ballet together with why we're speaking to Dane. So 25 years of Joburg Ballet is also another celebration that we're looking at, with their very first production being Giselle. I think that's a beautiful nuance. Also, just mentioning there, Dane, you said that there's quite a bit to celebrate, but I also do think that you are the man for the job. You've had quite a bit of experience in this industry, award-winning in actual fact. I want to go back in time. Right, your first created ballet was under the season Dreamscapes. What was your piece about?
So yes, I joined Joburg Ballet last year in January 2025, initially as an interim artistic director. And my first season was Dreamscapes, and it was a triple bill. And my first opportunity to create with the company was within this program. And I worked alongside Kitty Petler, who created a really beautiful work entitled The Underworld and Elsewhere. And we also staged Les Feed. And my work, I had to be aware of the fact that in a triple bill, you want to give the audiences a different flavor, a different taste. It's like offering a meal, a 3-course meal. So we started the program with Little Feed, and this is a pure classical romantic ballet, which for the lovers of pure ballet, they were able to get a classical work within the pure tradition on stage. And then in the middle of the program, we had my new work, Resonance, which used the music by Kyle Shepard, a completely jazz score, which is not usually used. Jazz music is not usually used for ballet productions. However, I have a mostly contemporary dance background. My training was in classical ballet, and I later moved on as a performing artist into contemporary dance, but always holding on to the classical purity and the aesthetic of ballet. However, I come from a jazz family. My dad was a rhythm guitarist, and my granddad was a saxophonist, and they had a band called Cuban Combos. And I grew up in Port Elizabeth, where an area at the time was called South End. It was a melting pot community of different people from different backgrounds, different races. And at the time of apartheid, these are the stories that relate to me about the importance of jazz bars, jazz clubs, underground spaces where people communed together, listening to jazz music as a form of silent protests where they could mix with each other, get together against the rules of the time. So my work, Resonance, was to speak to the resonant memory of that time, in that despite what was happening in the country at the time, the spirit of the people still defied the laws, and through music came together. And my dance was just to speak to that moment in time, that it's not something that has suddenly just disappeared, that there are still memories that linger from that period, that gets triggered here and there, either whether it's in a nightmare or whether it's something that you see on the street that can trigger an emotional reaction that can set you off. So my work spoke to initially when I was commissioned it was 2024. So it was 30 years since the 1994 election. So it was quite resonant in my mind of this anniversary, and I wanted to touch on that anniversary. And I was also cognizant of the fact that work was going to be traveling to the UK, and that they invited the company to perform as part of their program during the Black History Month in the UK. So I was cognizant of the fact that coming from South Africa, being a mixed race, colored person, coming from that particular background, I wanted to create something that spoke to that part of my upbringing, which is a particular part of Southern African history, that to an outsider, particularly in Europe or in the UK, they might connect with that, because I was aware that in the UK people were protesting and boycotting and trying to do what they could on the other side of the world to support the cause in South Africa. So that was my offering within the Dreamscapes triple bill. And I think it was a very interesting and diverse mixed bill for the company. And we had a great showing at the Roodepoort Theatre. And it was actually one of our most successful or more successful triple bills in terms of sales. So it was a good introduction into the company. However, I probably in hindsight would have appreciated a little bit more time just to settle in the company, get to know the company members, get to know who they are, get to understand what their abilities are and where their temperaments lie. And because, if I walked into the company by myself, alone, and the company's been going for a number of years, and suddenly you are there faced with all these different people from different walks of life, different stories, different expectations, different life journeys. And here I am in the front after just a week or two, getting to know them, and there I am making a work and trying to be an artistic director. So it was so much in a very short space of time. If I could relive it again, I would take my time and not put the work on stage in such a short space of time.
Sure.
Because if you look at that, our country's history, you can't tell it in 30 minutes. You can basically just scratch the surface. So I hope to revisit that storyline at some point.
And we hope to see that, Mr. Dane. I think lastly, just as a parting shot for those who want to catch Giselle, they've missed the Joburg leg. What are the times for the State Theatre in Pretoria?
So tomorrow we have our first show at the State Theatre at 12 p.m. And then we've got two more shows on Saturday and Sunday at 3 p.m. And it's a great theatre. It was the first venue for the company when it started all those years ago. So in essence, it's a homecoming. So it's historic. It's an important time for the company. So I hope that people come out to celebrate with us. It's part one of our anniversary offering, and there's much more in store for the rest of the year.
We cannot wait, Mr. Dan. The voice there of Dane Hurst, in actual fact. Apologies. And that is a multi-award winning dancer, choreographer, as well as artistic director at Joburg Ballet. And we just a few things to take note of. Firstly, the story of Giselle through ballet is one that I'm excited to experience, but also the intricacies of that story is very emotionally charging. Okay, I'm not going to relay the entire story for you. I want you to go look for it, please. Mr. Dane, thank you so much for joining us. This has been an absolute pleasure, and I cannot wait to see your work on stage. All right, it is 15 minutes before the show comes to an end. I think let's all get some music. Let's take a quick breather. When we get back, we will touch base with Morris Touch.